All right, so let's go ahead and finish up with a discussion of how we can improve these different group decision-making processes. So I think this week, this is where I'm going to finish up. I am going to kind of move our schedule around a little bit. So next week, I will start talking about modern trends in work groups and work teams. We will briefly start talking about leadership, but I'm going to go ahead and kind of knock organizational development off of our calendar. And we'll kind of finish our class with a discussion of leadership. So in general, when we're talking about group work, one of the first assumptions that we have is that a group will be more effective than working alone. And as we've already seen, being in a group doesn't make decision-making any better. It doesn't make it get done faster. And this is what's known as the illusion of group effectivity. The idea that just because you're in a group, you will make a better decision than you would have on your own. And that's not entirely true. Because of things like social inhibition, not wanting to really share our ideas, because of social loafing, because of groupthink, because of polarization of ideas, where people with different ideas get more polarized over time, we need to find a way to make sure that our groups work effectively. So what are some different ways that we can do that? Well, one of the first things that we can do is we can appeal to the selfish nature of people. Even within a group, individuals have their own goals that they want to achieve. So what we could do is provide an incentive for that. If we utilize incentives basically create a possibility for comparison. So if we know that there's an incentive and we're working really hard, it can drive us to higher performance. If we don't really like the incentive all that much, or if we don't think it will be very helpful, it might actually lower our level of work. So as we've kind of talked about before, if we want to do incentive systems, we have to make sure they're things people actually want, and we need to make sure that there are goals that people actually achieve. Additionally, we want to ensure as much as possible that our group norms don't encourage anybody slacking off, no loafing. We can also make sure that we are sharing information with our other group members. We encourage full open sharing. And this means that we need to bring in a few different safeguards to make sure. Reduce time pressure whenever possible. The more time pressure we have, the more prone to bad decision making we are. We can break people into subgroups, so maybe in a smaller group, people will feel less inhibited. We can bring in a devil's advocate, somebody who's basically going to argue the opposite every time, the opposite of what we want, so that way more information gets brought to light. And additionally, this is something that needs to be modeled from the top down. If you're a leader of a group, you need to be encouraging and sharing that open information. If you don't, the people who are following you will get the idea that that's not something we do here, so it needs to be modeled. We also need to set goals that can be reached. So we kind of talked about this last unit, talking about goal setting theory. Goals need to be specific and they need to be challenging, but they also need to be attainable. This helps increase commitment, and it also helps improve communication and coordination between group members. When these goals are vague, it can be harder to make a decision. And then finally, let's consider the role of diversity. Do other perspectives or other points of view need to be considered? Groups, especially ones that are informal, often will form on the basis of similarity. And that can be really helpful because it creates that sense of cohesiveness and boosts morale. This can help make decisions much more quick in that respect, but it can also lead to groupthink. If the group is really cohesive and really similar to each other, the difference between the group and anybody who's not in the group is going to become more apparent, and that can potentially lead us to groupthink. Now, diversity within a group can have a benefit. It does reduce the likelihood of groupthink. It creates greater opportunities for information sharing because we know now that there are other people that do not have the information we have. The only problem is that with more diverse groups, the group may have difficulty forming in the first place because of that increased likelihood for conflict. So that's kind of an option that you need to weigh. All right, so this was kind of a shorter little lecture. I hope you have a wonderful week. I will see you next week when we talk about modern trends in work groups and work teams, and we start talking about leadership. Take care, y'all.